Hey, how you doing? Welcome. So this is lesson 6. Only 2 parts to go after this one. Congratulations for following this far. I hope you're feeling good about yourself and the progress you're making with Unreal Engine. It's very easy, as I've said before, to feel overwhelmed with the software. But the whole point is that as long as you're enjoying yourself and having fun and being creative, then it makes things a lot easier. Now, in this part, what we're going to be looking at is animation inside of Unreal Engine. Now, animation, we can bring in animated meshes into Unreal Engine and, use the pre-animations for those. But sometimes we want to do things inside of Unreal Engine that basically rely on us animating things inside of the software. Now, you may be used to things like, 3ds Max, Blender, Maya, whatever, for doing your animation for you and being able to animate an entire scene using that and getting your keyframes and so on. Now, we still have the ability to do that inside of Unreal Engine, but we do that by using a different tool. We do that by using the sequencer. Now, let me go in and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to pull up my desktop, and in here I've got a nice empty scene, so I've got nothing in it, and I'm just going to click play. There we go, and you can see here's my mini character, or whatever she's called, I always forget, and just a big empty scene. Now please ignore the key clacking, I realise it's quite loud. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some basic stuff in here, okay, just to really get us kind of started and get us animating stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up my content drawer, but I want it to be there permanently, so I'll go to my content browser 1, there we go, got it here, and I'm going to get my starter content, architecture, and I want this wall door 400 by 400, so I'm just going to drop that into my scene. You'll notice I haven't got my snaps on, and that's so that it snaps to the floor easily and I can move it exactly where I want. And I'm going to move this to, let's say, 0, 0, 0. There we go, so it should be in the middle of my scene. Excellent. Now I'm going to turn my snaps back on and I'm going to set them at 10. Okay, that's a good amount for basically us moving things around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a wall. So for that to work, I'm going to use this wall 400 by 400. So I'm just going to alt and drag, just to drag this out, and I'm using the snap tool to get it to just the right shape. And there we go. So I'll select my wall 400 by 400. I'll select this one with the doorway, right click, and I'll replace my selected actor with a wall. And then I'll drag this across like that. There we go. So now what I've got is this nice doorway. And if I click play from here and run up to it, I can run through it. And because of collisions, I can't run through the wall. Brilliant. Okay, so that's working just the way I want it to. Okay, so I want the door to open for me, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a third wall, and the third wall is going to be a sliding door, okay? So this isn't a brilliant design, but I'm encouraging you to do things yourselves afterwards. So let's make a quick copy of this, and I'm going to fit it over here like that, okay? There we go. So now we have this just here, and our player obviously cannot go through it. Okay, brilliant. So we've got everything we need really to start doing kind of an animated sequence just of opening this door. Okay, and this is just a very simple kind of thing just to show you what I mean by this kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create something. So if I come up here and go to these 3 little buttons up here, now I want the one that looks like a movie clapperboard, that's what that's called, and I'm going to add a level sequence. So a new level sequence asset that I place inside my level. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to ask me to save my level. So I'm going to call this my test level or test map, depending. And now I've got this called test level inside of it. Hang on a second. Test level. So I've got a level called test level and I've got an asset called test level. I'll call my map underscore test level. Okay, so there we go. So inside my scene, you can now see that I've got this. This is my test level just here, yeah? And with my sequencer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up so you can see what's inside of it and show you how we're going to be using it. So let me close my content browser again for the moment. And over here you can see a button that says Open Level Sequence. So if I click that, we now get this like a timeline. If you've used things like Adobe Premiere or if you've used keyframing tools inside of a DCC app, you may be familiar with these. If you're not, don't worry, okay? Sure, it seems a little bit, oh no, another thing to learn, but I promise you we'll get there. Okay, so I'm going to click Save, because, you know, it's always important to keep saving things. And there's only one thing in this scene at the minute that I want to animate, and it's this kind of sliding fake door thing here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this over here. So if I do a right click, add an actor to my sequencer, and I'm going to add wall door 400 by 403 because that's its name. And when I do that, you'll notice that now it's added here to this track. Now I've got here a little timeline, okay, and my timelines basically allow me to go between here and here. And you'll notice I've got a default length here set of 150, and if I come down here, my entire event has a length of 165, okay, so this is my working range. Now I'm going to keep that as it is, but if you wanted to change it, you know, you can move this around manually to adjust it, or I could click on these and I could change the numbers that way, whatever really is going to work for you. Now let's put that back there, make sure it's selected again. I just did a Control Z there, by the way, just in case you were wondering. Okay, so if we want this door to move, you'll notice at the minute it's not doing anything. Okay, we have this play button at the bottom. If I click play, nothing at all is happening. So there's nothing animated yet. But what we're going to do is we're going to put in a keyframe for our door. Okay, so we're going to have our door basically know where it starts, and we're going to have our door know where it ends by doing this. So in order to set a keyframe, what I can do is, you see here where it says transform. Transform means its location, rotation and scale. We've discussed that before. And just here's a little plus, so we can add this key at the current time. Fantastic. So now, no matter what happens, frame 0, the rotation, the location and the scale are all going to be what they are now, because we've set this as a keyframe. Now, if I move over here, let's say to frame 120, so that's more or less 3 seconds. That's a bit long. Let's say frame 60, okay? So at frame 60, what I might want to do is move the door to an open position and press the keyframe button again. And now if I scrub through this, so backwards and forwards, you can see my door is tweening between the two states, and you can see the two states are represented there and there. So that's the movement states of the axis for this doorway. And another thing it's doing, okay, if we were to look at the curves, there we go, you can see that it's slowly interpolating in and slowly interpolating out. Now we could change these if we wanted to. So if I selected this key, I could right click and I could make it linear or a constant or anything else. So if I make it linear and just click save, there we go, and then do this, you'll notice that it eases in, but then it goes at a constant speed to there. Well, that's fine. Now, what say that we then go, well, let's have a second of clear time, or 2 seconds of clear time even, where you can walk through the door. So that would go up to, let's say, frame 120 here. Well, if we don't want the door to open or close for 2 seconds, which is a long time, let's make it 1.5, then let's add a keyframe again. So now what's happening is our keyframe here is allowing us to open the door, wait for this period of time, and then we'll come over to here to frame 150, which is our end point, and we'll move this back to there and press the keyframe again. So now our door opens and closes, and we can preview it doing that. If I just press the space bar or play, you can see our door opens, pauses and closes again. So it's like a security door. Fabulous. That's exactly what we needed. Now if I now close down my sequencer and just right click and play from here, you'll notice that my sequence isn't actually doing anything. It's not playing. Okay, now we can make our sequence play at start. So if I press our sequence button here, we could go autoplay, and then I could go right click, play from here, and it should automatically play, and it'll just do it the once. It's not looping, so it's not going to open again. Now you may have noticed, of course, we have the option to add a loop to this if we want. So we could loop it indefinitely or loop it a certain number of times, and we can add intervals, and we can tell it what speed to play at, so we could slow it down. There's lots and lots and lots of different things we can do here. But another thing we could do as well, if I just press these little arrows to reset things, is we could use a pressure plate system like we used in the previous blueprint, so we can combine the two. So what I could then do is, and I'll just use the level blueprint for this because it's, you know, it's here, I may as well. So I'll get, let me see, my window, and I'll get my place actors, there we go, and I'm going to get a little cube, there it is there, and we'll pretend this is our pressure plate, and on top of this I'm going to put a box trigger like so, there we go, and I'm just going to scale it. Now if I'm going a little bit fast, please hit pause, you know, I really don't mind, that's the whole point. So there we go, we'll go on this pressure plate. Now I'll go into my level blueprint, let's let that load up, here it is here, and we'll get rid of both of these things here, there we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and with my trigger box here under events, collision, add on actor, begin overlap. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a reference to this now, okay, our test level. So if I right click with that selected, I can create a reference to test level, and I'll drag that out, and I'll just type play sequence player, there we go. So now what's going to happen is when I step on top of this, as long as I connect these two arrows together, anything that steps on that is going to kick off the sequence. So let's try it out. Play from here. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. There it goes. Now I can walk through it, and then it shuts again. And if I come back around it again, it'll open again. Okay, so it's a fantastic kind of way of getting doors to open and close without having to use an interaction system. Okay, obviously, you know, it's basic, but it's a great way of animating stuff. Now, what other things can we do as well as that? Well, let's say that we want to add something to our animation, or maybe we want a second animation that's going to play when we step on this or when we get near to this or whatever. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a cutscene so that you can see exactly what I mean by this. So let's get this little doorway and its two walls. There we go. And I'm going to use my movement tool and hold down Alt, and I'm just going to drag it so that we come in this way. And I'm going to box this room out. So I'm going to hold Alt and rotate this 90 degrees. And then I'm going to duplicate this wall once and twice. And let's see how close I got. Well, close enough. That's not bad, is it? Let's do it again on this side. There we go. So now we've got this enclosed room, yeah? Now, using a sequence, we can do a number of things. And one of the things we can do is we can control cameras. Now, I'm going to build a second sequence because we can have multiple ones. So add level sequence, and it's going to give us a name that, you know, we call it. So I'm going to call it test level 2. Well, I'll call it test sequence actually. It makes more sense, doesn't it? And I'll turn off caps lock. There we go, test sequence 2. Now, test sequence 2, again, we've got the same number of frames and everything, which is, you know, what, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 5 seconds. 5 seconds is probably right, but we could bring this in, maybe make it 120 if we wanted to. And I could change these to 120, 120. There we go, that's our full range now, 120 seconds. Frames, sorry. If you consider this 30 frames makes a second, so that's 3, 6, 9, 12. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a camera in this. And the camera, for our sakes and purposes, is basically going to allow us to do a little cutscene to kind of show you a clue of what you're going to need to do to get out of this room, right? So if we start by adding the camera, I'm going to click here, create a new camera and set it as the current camera cut. Bop. Right, so what's happened is this has now created a camera in our scene, and you can see up here, pilot actor, cine camera actor. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it around like this so you can see it a bit better. There we go, there's our doorway. And you'll notice we're pretty heavily zoomed in at the minute. Now that's because this isn't a game camera, this is basically recreating any camera we want, and at this point it's using 16:9 digital film with a universal zoom. Now we can change this to pretty much anything we want, like a 30mm or maybe even a 12mm, you know, we've got plenty of options here. I'm going to use mine as probably a 30mm prime with a full stop of 1 point whatever, okay? If you know about cameras, great. If you're not sure about them, it doesn't matter, okay? We're just spitballing, we're just kind of showing you what to do here, okay? You can have fun playing with this later. If you want to change the focal length, we can do that here, we can crop, we can focus. We'll come into this more though, okay, in a more advanced talk about sequencer and a more advanced talk about cameras. For the minute, we're just going to get this working. Right, so the first thing that we're going to want to do with our cine camera actor is we're going to want, and if I scroll down here, to set its transform, because its transform is where is the camera, so plop, there we go, it's here. Now, the reason we're going to have the camera focus here is because the player is going to come through the door, they're going to face that locked door and go, oh, what do I do? So, let's give them an indication of what they should do. So we're going to go to, let's say, 1.5 seconds, so 45 frames roughly. I know in America it's 24 FPS, but don't worry. And I'm just going to move along to here. Okay, and I'm going to hit the transform button again. Not transform, sorry, the keyframe button again. And now we've got a sweep going from here down to here. And then let's give the player a final clue after a second. So we'll move it across to here. Boop. And then finally, for the last bit, I'm going to move it to about here. Okay, so we're 100 frames in roughly. And I'm going to aim it at the door. And so that way we're giving a visual indication to our player that maybe they should look at the door. Okay, and then finally I'm going to bring it all the way over here and hit the frames again. Transform. So now, if I hit space, look at that, look at that. That's a pretty good clue, I think you'll find, yeah? Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to save, and again, I'm going to come out. So let me just exit my sequencer. Now to do that, there's a little eject button here to stop piloting. Pop, there we go. But you can see that because I've still got my camera selected, there it is there, I'm actually seeing what's through my camera. As soon as I select something else though, that'll be gone. If I want to keep that on, what I can do is just click this little pin preview button here, and then it will keep the cine camera on even if I click on other things. But I'm going to unpin that for the minute. There we go. Okay, excellent. Making lots of progress here. Now again, if I do a right click play from here and just walk through it, well, there's still no indication, okay? The sequence hasn't done anything, it hasn't ran. But not to worry. What we'll do is, we'll make a copy of our collision for our trigger box. So I'm going to bring this in, and this trigger box is going to fire when our player has walked through here. So it's going to take them a moment. Basically, once they interact or intersect with this about here, then it's going to kick in, which is good because that's when the camera's looking at us. So if I go back into my level blueprint again, open level blueprint, and again add an event, collision, add on actor begin overlap. There we go. And I'm going to just copy this bit, Control C, Control V, which is to play the sequence. But let's grab the sequence that we just created. Okay, so let's see if I can find it, because I'm sure I've given it a name that doesn't make any sense. Here we are. Test sequence spelt wrongly. Well done, Chris. That's genius. Let's put it over here. And if I go back to my level blueprint, right click and create a reference. There we go. So now I'll connect that to there and that to there. So what's going to happen when we walk in front of it, or into it rather? Let's find out. Right click, play from here. Doopy 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 doo. Oh. Excellent, we saw ourselves, but we only saw ourselves for a very brief moment. Okay, that was a little bit kind of, oh no, a little bit juddery maybe. Well, that's okay, we can fix that. What I'm going to do instead is, let's go back to our key, what do you call it, our cuts here, and I just want to select our camera. So there it is there. And I'll just grab my timeline and bring it back. There we go. Okay then, so if I come down here, we can see that my transform, I've got my keys here and everything. And maybe I want to move these keyframes over a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to marquee select them. Notice that I just did a drag and select. And I'm going to bring these over here like that. And then I'm going to right click and copy this keyframe. And I'm going to keep it here. So I'm going to right click, paste, and I can paste in my keyframe here. Or another thing I could do is I can alt and drag and drop in a keyframe here, and it'll make a same copy of this one. And we can see it's working by dragging this here, and you'll notice that we get a small pause. Okay, so that's brilliant. That's what we needed. Okay then, so I'm going to come out of this again. So I'm just going to click save and close that down. And now if we click play, and I think at this point we could probably do with a player start area, couldn't we? So let's click this box here, go to our more common things. There we go, so just here, basics, and we want a player start. There we are. And what I'm going to do now is if I just click play, I'll start there. I can walk in. Doo-doo. Ooh. Ooh. Ah. And I know now that I can walk forward this way, and that will open. Fantastic. Okay, so we have made a complete interaction using animated objects. But if I go in here again, it'll do the same thing again. Oh, incidentally, you can move while we're doing it. I haven't turned off movement there. So we might only want that to fire once. Now, fortunately, we'll turn off the ability for it to repeat itself. We can do that. And that's not too hard. All we want to do is drag out the execute pin from our second overlap, which is the one that shows us what we should do. And what we'll do with this is we'll type do once. There we go. So now it's replaced what was there and connected to the play here. I'll hit compile and I'll hit save. And now if I click play and walk through here, I can now step on here, walk through the door and come out. And then when I go back in again, isn't this fun? There we go. You'll notice it only does it the once. Okay, so that's fantastic. It's doing this pretty much exactly how we want it to do. Brilliant. Okay, so this is really kind of the basic of how we start using things like sequencer. Okay, this is one of the reasons why we use it as well. There are other things we can do with this, but it is so useful putting together, you know, basically montages, to be honest, of things moving and things doing things. If ever you've wanted complex movement inside of a game level, you know, this is one of the things you can do rather than having to pre-animate all of your assets and then bring them across in a DCC application. Now, to give you another example of that, let's just move this entire floor. There we go. So now, when the player steps out of this, I'll give them a little bit of space, not a lot. There we go. When the player comes out of this, it's going to be a case that, you know, there's a lot of floor there. Before, and now there isn't. So, you know, oh no, how do we progress? Well, that's okay. Let me show you again something we can do with the, what do you call it, with the sequencer system. So, sorry about this, I'm talking and I'm kind of demonstrating and stuff, and that's why I tend to go My wife would be very displeased with that. Anyway, as an example for this, right, let's have the old moving floor as an example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a moving floor. So I'll just make a copy of this, move it 90 degrees like so, and then I'll do this. There we are. And let's put it there, just at the beginning. Right, so when you come through this door now, okay, we're going to have the issue that there's going to be this platform here, and we'll want this platform to take you perhaps to the other side of the bridge. So we can use these things as transportation systems as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, let me see, go over here, create a level sequence again. In my level sequence, I'm going to call this floating platform, like so. And then what I'm going to do is just select my floating platform, right click, add to the sequencer, add wall door, because that's what it is, I haven't renamed it. And we've got the same length of time here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a cooldown section that's about 1 second, and then the rest of it's going to be transporting. So let's see, I'm going to add a key here, drag it across to 30 frames, give it another key. Then I'm going to drag it across to 120. And for that I want to make sure that it's all the way over here and touching this bit. There we go, so 120 frames. You'll notice that because I didn't click the keyframe, I just adjusted this and it shot back. It will do that. So if I move this and I don't set a keyframe and move this again, it will reset to its last keyframe point. But I was just adjusting this to get this to 120 frames. Now, what I need to do next is with that keyframe set, I'm going to let it wait until here. Okay, and then I'll do another keyframe after that. But we're going to hit a problem, so let me bring it across, add keyframe, bring it across to here, add keyframe. And can you see what the issue is? Well, if I hit space, the bridge is going to move successfully to there, but it's never going to reset itself. Okay, we'd have to literally make it play backwards, which we can do in a blueprint. But let's say we want to add more frames to this instead and have it go backwards, okay? And we can see that we need it to go back by what? 60, 90, 120. So we needed to go back by what? 3, 6, 90 frames. So we need an additional 90 frames on here. Now I'm just going to go over here, and I can see this finishes at about 165. So I'm going to add some extra frames onto this. So we're at 150. 150 plus 90 is 240. 240, tab 240. And now I'm going to drag this end marker all the way at the end, just there. Excellent. So now we have the ability to add additional keyframes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drag it all the way here to the end. Frame 240, well that's 241, that's no good. I want it to frame 240. There we go. 239 will do, 240, there we are. And I'm going to drag this all the way back over here. And just connect it up, there we go. Right, so now I can do a last keyframe. Pop. And you'll notice it's expanded all the way along the top now because it knows that our keyframe is basically giving us this flip-flop. So let's have a look at it. Oh, I'm tapping the wrong button. That one. So there it goes. It'll go across and wait for 1 second. And then it'll come back. Fab. But let's add a little bit of peril to this, shall we, as well, because peril's always fun. So on the return journey, so as to not encourage the player to go back when it goes back with it, what I could also do is I could do that. Just turn it 90 degrees. Okay? And if I turn it 90 degrees and hit keyframe, then what it's going to do is it's going to act like a dumper on its return. See? So whoop, and then whoop, back again. Now it's not especially neat because of the way it's interpolating between frames, but hopefully you're kind of getting the point here. Here we go. So I can go whoop, and then on return journey, whoa, woo. See? Magic carpet ride. But this means that when we get on it, we're only travelling one way and then this is returning. So we'll have to find another way back. So this is what you'd do if you were trying to make like a one-way journey but reset it again. Things like that. Now I'm going to take away this keyframe because, to be honest, we don't really need it. And that way when we're doing this, it'll just come straight back like so. And I'm going to put another collision just in here just to get it started. Or, actually, why bother? We don't need to do it that way. I can just click on here and do autoplay, and for loop, loop indefinitely. There we go. So now, when we come in, right click, play from here. We walk through our doorway. There's our little cutscene. Oh, like that. Then we walk on top of here. The door opens. We walk through. We wait for the bridge to come back. We walk onto it. We go across to here and we step off. And there, we have accomplished a journey. A journey, which is fantastic. Okay, so we have literally built some gameplay just using the sequencer tool. So that is one of the base uses and base reasons to use the sequencer asset. Now we can do more complicated things in this, like I mentioned. I mean, we can use any asset that has animation, for example, in a skeletal mesh, and we could animate it using this as well, if you wanted to do that. Or we could put together complicated montages of movement, or just about anything like that. But to be quite honest, for what we're doing, this is ideal. You know, again, in half an hour, hopefully you've managed to work it out from what I've been going on about here, but we've set up a cutscene hint system, we've set up a door interaction system, and we've set up a simple travelator just to go through our scene. So please, what I'd like you to do is just have a mess around with what I've taught you here. Okay, get used to it, and what we're going to do in the next 2 lessons is we're going to bring things together. We're going to make a thing, and it's going to be awesome. Okay, so until I see you in the next lesson, thanks very much for watching, and as usual, take it easy. Bye bye for now.